Okay, we're live, and June, I guess we've got, I'll just go around. We've got June, Aaron, Deafy Dad, Lou, Josie, and then Udi. And
Hey.
VR Meetup about VR Meetup.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
everybody.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jin, for the introduction. So I guess let's set the stage here a little bit and frame what it is we want to talk about. All the people who are here on this panel are involved in VR virtual community building in some form or other. And I guess when we want to discuss is, what's the significance of VR community building? And how does it relate to sort of in-person or meet-space things, right? And I think the most fascinating thing is that we're here in this custom-built studio built by NIFTIES. And this wasn't built for us, right? It was for all the other activities that you guys do in VR. So maybe we can start with Jin. What is the studio all about? Why did you build it? What is it for?
This is basically like do virtual productions, and maybe Boombox Head could explain a bit more. But yeah, it's a real-time environment where
this studio, man, it's crazy. So it's a real-time studio. We kind of took Hollywood and made it virtualized in a way. So what's cool about this studio is we have multi-cameras, and real quick, I could just run you through. We have multi-cam just like in real life, and we can do real-time edits here, and we use our avatars. Everything you're seeing on screen is actually people inside avatars. If you're confused, it's not animation. This is all real-time motion capture using mainly Oculus Quest. So I'm on a PC, and I record out through OBS.
Hello, world.
Hello. Yeah.
Very cool.
So we could do anything. We could do a bunch of things in here. It's pretty crazy. We shoot music videos in here. We have done some short films, and now we do podcasts and events and all.
What have you done though?
Yeah.
What are some of the things you have done in here?
Some music videos and a lot of podcasts. I shot a bunch of music videos in here last year, and we've done a bunch of Twitch streamers and YouTube content and stuff like that. And we've pretty much did that last year and a half, virtual productions.
Very cool, very cool. And then I have a question actually for Udi. Do we have the video Udi's last VR meetup in Altspace? Is that playable?
I'm not sure we have that. I'm seeing some.
It loops.
I'm seeing I'm seeing some loop of videos.
Yeah. There's a couple clips of your meetups there, so yeah, it'll show up on the stream, but you can talk a little bit about them.
Cool.
Yeah, please. Yeah,
I can just talk about it. Yeah. So we were running Reckless VR, which is it's a community for Bitcoiners. It's a VR meetup community for Bitcoiners by Bitcoiners, and we're doing meetups actually every weekend, every Saturday. We have a cool one tomorrow with Learning Labs about LSAT, which is a way to authenticate websites using Lightning payments. But we have those every week, so sometimes it's a technical topic like the one we're going to have tomorrow. Sometimes it's more of a discussion, an open discussion, or on any Bitcoin related topic really. And it's going pretty well. I think we've been running this for 3 months. We have from 50 to 100 people attending every VR meetup in VR, which is pretty cool. We had a big halving party with Krypton just on Sunday, with I think somewhere between 200 to 300 concurrent VR viewers and thousands more who watched the video stream. It was pretty cool. So the thing about the VR, obviously, as we all know, it's not super accessible. So a lot of people don't have the equipment, and can't actually join, but we try to make it as easy as we can to let people even join from their PC, or if they can't join the actual event, and at least they can view it on live stream. And the thing is, if the community is, if the community is strong enough and the discussions are good enough, then it's a lot of fun to watch, even on video. It's a very different, very unique thing compared to like Zoom conferences, because you really get to see the audience participate. The audience can ask questions. The audience can, sometimes go on stage. So it's really different than watching like a Zoom thing.
Do you have any
Even if you're
sense
just
of how
watching
many
at
of
home.
the people, Udi, do you have any sense of how many people at your event have the VR rig versus accessing it via PC or Mac?
Yeah, I think it seems like I don't have like strict, I don't have accurate data on it, but it seems like probably more than 50%, I guess maybe 70% who are on VR.
And
because it's really a community of VR enthusiasts. Right, yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, 70% desktop, 30% VR, but that 30% in VR makes it really cool content for everybody else, whether you're watching from a stream or you're there.
So I have two questions about that. But so first, a question to Lou. So Lou, you do Crypto Mondays meetups around the world in person, and you started recently doing them in alt space, right? So I guess my question to you is, what's the difference in terms of the people who show up live versus virtually, and what's the difference in the vibe, the tone, and the discussion?
Sure. So I run the Crypto Monday meetup in New York City. We've had Crypto Monday meetups in 57 cities around the world and completely decentralized. So, we have somebody runs it in LA, somebody in Miami, Tel Aviv, Paris, Shanghai. And so as soon as we went on lockdown, I decided to create the Crypto Mondays VR group, which was just renaming the Crypto Mondays New York City group. We have about 5,500 people in the group. But as Udi was saying, I mean, this is such a small percentage, I think, of our members have VR gears that the majority of the people come in. I don't get as many people as Udi does. We probably get 30 to 40 on average, and they tend to be from all over the world. And probably less than half of them were Crypto Monday members before.
That's exciting.
And then I sort of had another question, which was, VR, I feel like it's sort of somewhere along a little bit further ahead in the curve of mass adoption than cryptocurrencies. So the fact that we have cryptocurrency meetups in VR is kind of like, two things looking for mass adoption squared or something like that. So those, you work on crypto art, which I think is one of the more accessible parts of the scene, and you do a lot of things in virtual worlds, right? Like Decentraland and so on. So I'm just, as well as physical atom things on paper. So I'm just wondering, from your point of view, what sort of things go through your mind when you think about VR meetups, live meetups, community building in virtual worlds versus in person?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm super lucky that I get to go to a lot of the conferences in person, of course, before everything that's happening now. But the VR conferences and VR meetups are a totally new, different realm that is super exciting, because you can get that connection. Of course, it's going to be different in person, but you can get that connection through CryptoVoxels, Decentraland, whatever it is, just by going in with your computer, or you have a headset doing it that way as well. And for me, my business, and in general for the community, like, it is so important to have community building, and you get that so much more than through Twitter DMs or Discord chats. So it's totally been, game changing. I've met people in VR who have become collectors based on, chats we've had in VR before, or just in general interested. And then of course Jin does and that do so many things in all of these worlds, and they actually have one world which is pretty cool, where they had a booth. They helped me set up a booth with some of my art in it. So I would love to see that more with these VR meetups, having other different, how we have in real life, different vendors come and kind of talk about their projects. I'd love to see that more in VR as well. But it's totally been game changing, especially at a time like this right now.
What do you guys think really is the difference? Is it sort of the intensity of the experience? Is that a difference?
Do you mean compared to physical meetup or compared to
other online interactions, I guess?
Yeah, so I think you really get this kind of interaction that you don't get in video. I mean, it's definitely different, but when you can see people, they move their hand, they move, you see where they're looking at. It sounds, so I'll give you an example. So my biggest fan is my mother, and she told me that she's watching my one of the meetups, right? And we were two people on stage. It was me and the guest, and we were talking, and she wasn't sure who's who, but then she told me, you know what, I know it's you because it's the way you scratch your head. I know it's you. So it's really communicating a lot, just the So it's hard to explain, but when you see it and you're in front of someone and speaking with them, you can actually recognize them somehow sometimes just from the way they move. So it's a really different experience, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also,
You definitely look like an avatar.
I feel like there's kind of like a degree of levity and like a lack of seriousness to this kind of like Udi's like a Woody from Toy Story, like June and Josie are like disembodied robots. DeFi Dad's like a giant ant that's like scaring, like we're all just kind of here, like I don't know, we're not like taking ourselves so seriously right now. You know what I mean? Like we're all just kind of
Speak for yourself,
hanging out friends, like hey, it's almost like a different. Like I'm less concerned with like you guys thinking that I'm cool or something, than I would be like at our physical meetup or something or. Regular.
And adding
okay. Like I'm like Mo from The Simpsons. I'm not expecting you guys to take me seriously.
Adding both of those points, I also think something that's really neat, especially with these virtual worlds that are so crypto focused, and obviously a lot of them have a lot of ETH things going on them. But for example, crypto voxels, we can be at a meetup. June, you led an interview with me there at like this huge stadium, and then afterwards I can say to people, hey, come check out this really cool gallery over here. And you can bring people to different locations. Seeing last night I was doing a live Twitch stream with the coin artists, and people were watching in crypto voxels, had a watching party for the Twitch stream. It's so cool to be able to bring people like into your universe, into other galleries, into other like studios, which you don't necessarily get when you're meeting up in person, which is really cool as well.
I think there's like a one thing I'm sorry. I think there's an alignment to like when you get into VR, everyone is really aligned about being early adopters. And so I know I have been in a honeymoon phase the last 3 or 4 months. Like I had really got a headset because the quarantine was coming, and I was like hearing from like and Selkis, I'd seen like Udi has such an impressive meetup, and then seeing what Lou was doing, and it was like, oh wow, like that's so cool. Like I want to go like hang out with people, that are like-minded. So you hop into this space and you instantly have so much in common with folks that are willing to get at set or at least open this up on their and I think that's great. That's really special while we're all sort of living this like quarantine life and looking for ways to socialize with others.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, I feel like I'm so lucky to have a VR rig and be able to have this extra experience, and I feel like everybody else who's there kind of feels the same way.
So here's a question. Post-COVID, are people still going to be going to our VR meetups? What do you guys think?
Definitely. I think so.
A very interesting thing, I think, in this community is that a lot of people kind of want to keep their privacy, and this is something amazing that you can do in VR. So you can have an avatar that doesn't look like you. You can pick a name, whatever you want, and you still get to really interact with people face to face, without video, without showing your face. So I think so, and this works well in like a conference or a presentation setting as well. If people want to ask questions, it's the distance between the audience and the presenter kind of disappear, and people feel much easier to much more free to ask questions and to interact with people that they otherwise might be fearful to approach it at all. So yeah, I think a lot of people will continue to see the benefit in that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
I
that
was,
when you think about the COVID and I forgot who said it, but it was COVID didn't break anything. It just showed everybody what was already broken. And I think that VR was already starting to take off, and I think that this is just going to dramatically accelerate the growth of wherever VR was going. I think it's just going to get there faster because of this.
Yeah, like I for one, like when I got my VR headset, maybe like 2 months ago, and I first put it on, like my instant reaction, just going through the demos and like the Beat Saber stuff and whatever, I was like, okay, this is this is like paradigm shifting right here. Like this is, this is like the iPhone. This is the same way I felt when I got my first smartphone. I was like, okay, this kind of changes everything.
Yeah.
Here. And it might not be that everybody like rushes in and gets one of these things overnight. Hopefully this thing is my big annoyance is that it feels like really uncomfortable on my face wearing this thing. So hopefully there's like lighter versions that come out that don't hurt my face so much. But no, this is total like paradigm shifting, I think. Like this is like just the ability to do. I mean, I'm curious. I feel like because like we'd mentioned before, the crypto community is already kind of like on the edge, like the bleeding edge of innovation as it is. So this is something we'd want to just embrace naturally. And my initial reaction when I saw people doing these VR meetups was like, oh, this is just kind of like a weird like signaling thing. Like, oh, look at me, cool, I'm doing a VR meetup. And then I start coming to these things, kind of get used to it, and like, okay, yeah, like I really see why this is probably the future. Like in one form or another. Is it going to replace physical events completely? Probably not. But I think this is a great way to augment. This is a great way to find community. Like how many different countries in the world are we like representing right now? Just with the 6 of us, 7 of us. Right?
Really
It's probably at least like 4, right? I mean, how else could you possibly do that? Right? It's crazy.
Yeah, it's cheaper.
Well, I agree. Yeah, especially for these sorts of world-changing and really serious discussions that we're having right now. Very important to meet face to face. I'm curious, Jin and Boombox, you spend a lot of time building community VR. What do you think? Where do you think sort of VR communities or VR interactions are going to go after this? Is it going up the curve of mass adoption, or where do you think it's headed?
Hey,
well, I think
go for it, Jin.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, man. I think it's really like bringing the cost down for production. So in general, it's kind of like when I first got into this, I was able to make everything I didn't have access to. Like I didn't have a studio, didn't have all the cameras, didn't have the means to have these large productions. So I think for the indie, it's something that's like priceless for the indie, because now an indie can pretty much remote produce content remotely. And yeah, you could say that the quality isn't there like photorealism, but if you've caught the Unreal 5 demo recently, they had some really, really good examples of how it might look even better in the future. So like you guys said, I think the COVID really just pushed everyone to more of a remote mindset, and virtual reality is going to kind of be there to fill like new ways to work from home, remote robotics, and like who knows where it's really going to push this technology. I think that there's a lot of really unforeseen things in the future that are going to be beneficial for VR and stuff. Unfortunately, it was the bad times. But what's up, Jim?
Have you ever partnered like with other producers? Like Bits and Tokens is the company that I partner with to put on Crypto Mondays VR. Have you ever partnered with them or other companies to work on co-productions?
Yeah, we're always interested.
We'd like to. I mean, yeah, we always want to collaborate. Like this is a kind of real-time space to work in. In the film industry, for example, it's production stuff like all across the board. And in here, like, really, my dream is to live in VR and earn digital currencies doing so. And how do we use this for work? I mean, I don't think it's practical yet for like, coding in here per se, or doing like things that you would normally do on monitor, but it does lend itself to theater production, making content, and it can be a lot of fun too.
Here's a question. Yeah, no, I agree. Is there any are there any like crypto wallets that are integrated to any VR social networks?
MetaMask is through ExoKit. So ExoKit basically it's like you can have MetaMask inside any VR program as an overlay, and it basically can augment any web app. So yeah, it's coming soon. There's an in-world QR code scanner as well, so you could scan QR codes while you're in VR. And we were testing that at the Virtual Market 4, which it worked really beautifully. There's some videos if you look up on. We'll link it after in the description.
I mean, that would be huge. Like, even just as an artist myself, and normally, obviously, I go to conferences, I sell things, in the physical space, t-shirts, art, whatever it is. But to be able to do that in VR would be epic. To be able to sell NFTs, to be able to sell. Now I have, a Bitcoin gas mask on, a Bitcoin pin on, like to be able to sell different, things, skins or accessories for your avatars, or even NFTs for your wallet, and art that you can put on your VR studio. I mean, that would be huge.
Yeah. An in-world economy.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you guys think are the biggest barriers to adoption at this point of I mean, obviously, like the actual hardware itself is not, cheap or easily accessible at this point, but like just as far as like the overall experience goes and just getting, I mean, for one, I kind of get kind of nauseous when I wear this thing too long. Like what do you guys see as kind of like the biggest just hurdles to adoption at this point for doing more of these types of things on a broader scale?
So the hardware is obviously a big one, but I think we can be creative around that. So for weekly meetups and for the larger event we did with Raycon last weekend, and we actually got headsets and shipped them to a lot of the speakers so that they can participate and be speakers on the event. So because that really adds a lot, because otherwise they just stand like this with their hands on the side and don't move their heads, and that's not very interesting. So it really adds a lot for everyone if the speaker has a VR headset. So I think you can get creative in ways like that in order to make the experience better for everyone, and try to find like the best places to make impact, even though it's difficult to get headsets right now, and they're actually out of stock mostly. So, but you can get creative around that. So I think that's the best thing we can do right now, to try to make it accessible for people who are not in VR through video streaming, and to really get the headsets to the people who will make the experience best for everyone.
Yeah, I agree. I also think another way, DeFi Dad, you were bringing people into, like, crypto voxels, for example. You can just go in on a link, and any computer can use it. People can even go down on their phone. It's becoming Quest compatible as well. But like DeFi Dad, weren't you bringing people instead of Zoom into crypto voxels?
Yeah. Just like making it a point every day to try to have a meeting in crypto voxels and share the link to hop in. So like I like Udi, all the videos that you guys share from your meetups, like those are really powerful. Like we have to work harder at sharing and showing people, and when you show them how cool that meetup is, I mean, that's where people get FOMO and they realize, whoa, like there's this whole community out there. And again, it's not that every person has to be into it. Like I've explained VR and talked about like my headset to tons of people who said, it just isn't for me. It's fine. I just move on from those people, because like there are so many other people that are just so like excited about what's possible here. And it goes back to showing them. So Crypto Voxels is really nice because you can just share a link. But for anyone who does have a PC, they can hop obviously into AltSpace VR and VR chat and experience all this coolness. And honestly, I think that's what prompts them then to buy the headset. I got into Crypto Voxels and then I was like, holy shit, I gotta get a headset. Like, you know, like everyone's been talking about.
Yeah, look, just the more and more. Yeah. Just the more and more, I mean, the majority of people on Zoom just were invited to Zoom to participate in something they wanted or needed to. And I think the same thing will happen in VR as more and more things are thrown that they want to be a part of. I think it's just naturally, and I, my experience has been 90% of the people who I've brought into VR have really been excited about it, and it surpassed their expectations.
Oh yeah, it automatically puts a smile on everyone's faces. Yeah.
It does.
And it really adds like the next level of kind of conversation and just like the overall experience to it. I mean, I think the realization people learned quickly with Zoom is like you dial into a Zoom happy hour and you can't have a side conversation with anybody. It's just you just have to go along with whatever the main conversation is, right? And whatever you have to kind of find a way to interject into that, or just interrupt the person, or change, or just hijack the conversation entirely. But in a VR context, you know, I can have a side conversation with like DeFi Dad over in the corner here, while you guys are all talking about your thing over in that corner. And it gives, like, I mean, I think people realize like the idea of a Zoom happy hour sounds cool until you're actually in it, and you're like, well, this doesn't really replicate the experience of an actual happy hour, because you know, I can't just go pull this person off the side and have a conversation. I can't do that.
Have no Zoom experience. Because that I feel like this quarantine has pushed everyone like one step further in their like tech adoption. So like my parents have never used a Zoom call before. They had no idea what it was. Now they think it's interesting because they've had some meetups with their friends in Zoom. But then for all of us who knew Zoom already, that's boring. We know how that works, and I feel like we've seen like the needle move now with VR, and yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's really the silver lining in this like really depressing quarantine that's happened. I honestly feel like I've met more people and learned more in quarantine since it started. So I'm just very grateful for like the crypto community is the reason that I got into VR. I mean, it's everyone evangelizing this, and yeah, just very, very grateful to be a part of that.
Yeah, this is definitely that type of thing I would have just stumbled into without crypto.
We're coming up on our time here. So maybe the last question I'll ask you guys around the table is, how much would you pay to attend a crypto conference VR in, let's say, 2021? So let's start with you, Udi. How much money would you pay for a ticket to a crypto conference in VR?
10 bitcoins. No, I don't know. It really depends. Really depends on the conference.
Yeah.
Really depends on the conference, I guess. I don't know. Obviously, it seems like people who charge for VR conferences are usually charging much less than for a physical conference. But there are also so much, you know, there are fewer expenses. You don't need to get a venue. You don't need to get people to travel and find a hotel and so on. So there are a lot of expenses that you save. So I think it's possible to make it work. I don't know what to tell you about pricing. I guess it really depends on the context. I don't know.
Sorry, I feel like I have a similar answer, that it really depends on what it is and what experience you're getting. And of course it depends on like who would be presenting there, whether you would have cool booths. Like it depends a little bit on the experience. But I think something that's really interesting about VR conferences is the add-ons that you could do VR, and things like NFTs that you can natively, you know, sort of give to every participant to make it a bit cooler and kind of have some swag to show off that you attended. So if there was a VR conference, I'd totally attend, and I'd hope that the creators found significant ways to, you know, entice people with things like that, like NFTs.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking if I can throw a meetup, you know, a VR event, and just get Udi to come, I can make some money. But yeah, I think we're all in the very beginning of what this is going to be, and like what Josie was talking about, I think that the cool things we're seeing now, my assumption is in a year we're going to see 100 more things that are even cooler than that, and that I think when those things start happening, you know, I think you'll be able to charge considerably more money probably than you can today.
Yeah, I'm with Lou on that. I think as the standard for attending VR events continues to get better, and as it becomes more common, like you'll probably see folks charging more. But it's funny, like just coming from like Ethereal and then watching what you guys did with Consensus, and there was sorts of other like awesome events in April and May. I would love to try to keep us down to as close to free as possible, because I think like the goal of all of this is, the goal of, for me, every day, it's adoption. And I just want as many people as possible to get exposure to this. And I know that the headset is already a barrier to adoption here. So, like let's assume that these become more ubiquitous, or do more events in something like crypto voxels, or more people have PCs to get involved. Yeah, I'd love to think of conferences putting the pressure on sponsors and saying like, hey, we're gonna push for more sponsorships, which I think is the challenge for most of our events right now. Is I am very hopeful that sponsors that were a part of Consensus and Ethereal and other events are realizing, hey, it is worth our time to sponsor these events because they're well attended. And then that way we can keep the events free for everyone to just enjoy themselves and come and meet people.
100%. Imagine if your cat was wearing a Kraken shirt, with this sponsored voucher so everyone could rep them. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. And
because if someone comes to an event, I mean, there's a chance events can be the spark for someone to like really dive deeper into our community, and I think that again that's the goal. Like I really would like to see people get inspired by going to these different events and say, you know what, I'm gonna like find a way to work this community somehow, and then that again leads to greater adoption.
Yeah, for me, I would help produce it. I'm doing a presentation tomorrow on kind of like building a large-scale crypto arts, kind of Burning Man / SIGGRAPH type of event.
Oh, that's so cool.
I would really be interested in helping make something like that possible, instead of paying for entry on, like, just like how we kind of threw this all together. About showing this effect and its best level.
I'd say
maybe $50.
I would say like after having spent like the last 3 months trying to pivot to a virtual event, I think like we'd all recognize, like DeFi Dad, June, everybody would recognize that the real Achilles heel to virtual conferences is the networking aspect. It's just the face-to-face networking. I mean, at Consensus this year we had a whole like kind of umbrella networking platform that I think conceptually it can work. I tried it out a bunch and it just wasn't the same as kind of just running into kind of a random person at a cocktail table and being like, hey, how's it going? It just wasn't the same, right? And I also think when we had like 23,000 people register for a conference for Consensus this week. And it's just like, how are you going to possibly find, I mean, we had a like matchmaking engine and things, but like, it's like, how are you going to find the right people to meet with? It was very, very difficult to try. And I heard a lot of other complaints or not necessarily complaints, but like constructive criticism from other folks who were attending, being like, yeah, like content was great, but networking, it's not quite the same. So I think content is like fairly easy to replicate from a physical panel to a virtual panel or whatnot. But the networking is really the hard part. And I also think that just with respect to the attendees, like I know you guys have kind of been talking about like trying to make it as free and accessible as possible, but I do think that one of the benefits of a physical conference is that there's a degree of vestedness that I have. Like I buy a plane ticket, I buy a hotel ticket, I buy a ticket to the conference. And I'm there, and I'm like, I'm not there just to fumble around for a whole week. Like I'm there to learn, I'm there to meet people, I'm there to do whatever, make some sales or whatever. Where with a virtual event, it's kind of like, okay, I kind of have it on the background, and if there's something more interesting on like some other website or whatever, I'll just go into that for a bit, or I'll just pop out for a little bit. And it doesn't really have my attention. And so there's some degree of like vestedness, or like I'm invested in like having a productive experience at this event, where if it's free, like Consensus free, we had 25,000 people show up, which is great, but how many of those 25,000 people were like actually like really engaged the entire time? I'd say probably not, like probably not a majority of them, I would reckon. So I think there's some kind of middle ground there that VR can maybe capture, in the sense that we can have these face-to-face talks. There's a bit more of a degree of vestedness because I went and bought a headset and put it on and charged it, and now I'm here with you guys. Not like I don't have 3 monitors on my desk where I'm getting Twitter and whatever else. So those are kind of my thoughts on all of this. I mean, I would definitely pay to come to something in like a Consensus VR. I mean, if I wasn't organizing Consensus, I'd probably pay to come to like a Consensus VR if it was.
Yeah. So here's my argument. I think you could get away with charging a couple of $1,000s for a VR ticket if you at the same time onboard somebody into VR. So let's say if I did a consensus VR, you pay $2,000, but I'll also throw in an Oculus Quest in there, which is $600, right? And I feel like I think it solves the chicken and egg problem, which is why would I get an Oculus Quest? What the heck am I going to do in there? Well, the answer is you're going to come to this conference, and it's going to help you in your business and learn new things, and you'll have, let's say, 5 days of excellent content, right? And at the end of it, you also have a Quest keep. So my sense is VR things are more easily monetizable than Doom things and metaverse things. Yeah, that's my.
I think the biggest thing. The biggest thing that I feel is there's serendipity, right? How can you create the serendipity you get at live events?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Just kind of the random run-ins.
Which I think in VR chat you kind of can have that. Which you know, it's harder to do that elsewhere.
Yeah.
I just want to say, I think that what you guys built here, this should be covered by some like major news networks. Like when I first walked into this, I was like, how is it possible that like how have I not heard of this? And just like it's so like forward thinking, like with Hollywood. I think, as you were saying, Boombox Head is kind of like on fire right now and everything's on hold. That's really like, I'm not saying this talk is going to get there, but like I really hope that someone shares this with the right person and is like, if someone can get a hold of like an Anderson Cooper or just one of those like big journalists out there, they should be covering this. This is an outrageous idea. Thanks, and I think the mainstream would just go nuts if they saw this. So any kudos.
Yeah, this is really cool. Yeah. This is definitely
Thanks, man. You guys make it awesome, though. It's always we got the studio, but it's who fills it up, right? So thank you guys for being here and testing it out. This is our first actual
for hosting us.
Live run. This is like our first actual full like live run, and this is our most in our newest version of the studio. So this is like legendary right here.
Excellent.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, I think we're at the end of our time. I think we can go and do the fun world hopping now. And we can leave the couch, right? Jin, I'll turn it over to you, and thank you again for hosting us.
Thanks, June. So if y'all want to join us in VR chat, add Boombox Head, or actually just add. We'll drop some usernames like .jin. Just let us know in the the chat, and we're gonna go hang out. World hop a bit.
Hey, Aaron.
And check out NIFTIES. NIFTIES Studios open.